Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Sex, Lies, and Menopause, the shocking truth about synthetic hormones and the benefits of natural alternatives, by T.S. Wiley with Julie Taguchi and Bent Formby. Narrated by Coleen Marlo. Player. We only know what we're told, and that's little enough. And for all we know, that isn't even true. For all anyone knows, nothing is. Everything has to be taken on trust. Truth is only that which is taken to be true. It's the currency of living. There may be nothing behind it, but it doesn't make any difference so long as it is honored. One acts on assumptions. What do you assume? Tom Stoppard, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. Act 2. Part 1. Sex. 1. It's only rock and roll. The drums were pounding. The beat, getting louder and louder, was on the upswing. The sun made its mark for noon in the sky, and well-worn trails were lined with throngs of worshippers who would snake toward the flat open spaces where a festival would take place. Hundreds would gather near gigantic structures built for the occasion, those who weren't engaged in work or engaged in play. The ground was littered with small, naked, running children, mothers and babies nursing on blankets, and yapping dogs festooned with red stripes of cloth. In an adjacent field, men naked to the waist except for the beads around their necks, passed around a bamboo smoking tube and danced and laughed and shouted. Men and women, their long hair decorated with flowers and rawhide bands, started swaying in unison, and some seemed to be hallucinating. The drums were inside them now, in their brains and bones. The lone drums and flutes were drowned out by instruments with strings, bigger, louder drums, and singing that would go on night and day for 3 days. The physicality of union on many levels, from eating to bathing and mating, may have been the true purpose of the gathering. Some of the fervid splashed naked in the small pond. Others, in pairs or groups, copulated openly. They stroked and petted each other and continuously displayed grooming behavior like combing hair, rubbing backs, and stroking one another's arms and feet. Finally, on the 3rd day, the gods hosed them down. The skies cracked wide open and a flood of near-biblical proportions ensued, the ultimate cosmic release at the end of the frenzy, an orgasm of nature. The place? Upstate New York. The tribe described to us, and the scene is from a documentary called Woodstock. We thought we invented music, love, and sex. We were so young. Since time began, men and women have heard music and been driven to sexual ecstasy. It's common knowledge that listening to music can be a religious experience, especially loud music. For many in Western culture, until the Renaissance, God was actually conceived of as only sound or vibration. The scientific reason for this is that in the software controlling hearing and balance in your brain, a small organ called the sacculus, part of the balance regulating system in the inner ear, is tickled at certain decibel levels. Loud music can activate the sacculus and create the feeling of movement or floating. That's why listening to music above 70 decibels sends a pleasurable buzz through the sacculus that ends up at the hypothalamus. A buzz that thrills the listener in the way bungee jumping or swinging very high does, a simultaneous flying and falling feeling. It's no coincidence that the distribution of frequencies typical of rock concerts and dance clubs is at exactly the right decibel level to make listeners feel as if they're floating. Your sacculus also speaks to the part of your brain that controls drives like hunger, sex, and more than a few other hedonistic responses, the hypothalamus. That's part of the reason sex, drugs, and rock and roll go so well together. Of course, the drugs we take now, Prozac, Paxil, Klonopin, Ambien, tamoxifen, Vioxx, Claritin, or Lipitor, beta blockers or ACE inhibitors, not to mention Advil and Tylenol PM, just aren't as much fun. Talking about my generation. Only about 35 of the 75 million of us born between 1948 and 1952 make it to college. where most of us were introduced to the principles of self-medication. By 1969, according to a Gallup survey of 57 college campuses, 31% of students had smoked pot, and between 10 and 15% admitted to using LSD. To clarify, at least 10 to 12 million of us smoked marijuana, and between 3 and 5 million of us dropped acid. Today, we get a kick out of loading up on nutritional supplements at the health food store. It's just not the same. We're just not radical anymore, but we should be. Our very lives are at stake, because half of all of the women today have already been on synthetic hormone replacement therapy, HRT, and we're not even sure of the damage it's done. And on the opposite side of the coin, most of us aren't really sure that we want to give up our drugs, HRT. Is living without hormones really living? We need to find out how much harm has been done and whether or not we should ever put our hormones back at all. Most of us would admit that without them we don't really feel good, no matter how many supplements we buy or how many miles we jog or how little fat we eat. But at the same time, we're all scared of heart disease, strokes, and cancer. We face the same inevitable health condition that made our parents obstinate, obdurate, and obsolete, a condition called aging, characterized by being stubborn, hardened, and out of date. None of us want to look and feel old, but most of us are in menopause. In 2002, 46 million women will reach the age of menopause. Menopause is the hallmark of aging in women. There exists today more than a few of us who fought the good fight for personal freedom, but now sit back and spout the party line of our generation about menopause being natural. Of course it's natural. So is pregnancy in the wake of free love. But that didn't stop us from taking hormones to avoid it in our youth. Those miracle drugs, contraceptives, were the hormones that kept us in school or going to work every day while having all the sex we wanted, without the natural consequence of childbirth and breastfeeding. It's a painful irony that when we were young and had everything to lose, our fertility and potential for genetic immortality, many of us eagerly tossed back hormones made out of mutated synthetic estrogens, fake progesterone, and even sometimes testosterone. In effect, a good many of us have been on synthetic HRT most of our adult lives. We may have taken them for a different purpose, but the drugs and contraceptives are basically the same synthetic hormones that are in HRT. The doctors who prescribed them had no idea they might impact our future fertility or what those hormones might be doing to us physically by preventing pregnancy. And now the very same authorities who wrote those prescriptions without a thought are warning us every day against taking the very same hormones. Doctors and researchers are in a panic because medicine is just starting to figure out exactly how toxic the synthetic hormone drugs like Prempro can really be. Prempro is a combination pill containing two synthetic, invented in a lab, hormone-like drugs. Prempro actually contains fake progesterone, or progestin, called medroxyprogesterone MPA, or Provera, in combination with the metabolite of horse estrogen, equinol, which is not like human estrogen, called Premarin. Back in the 1970s, when Provera was invented, Premarin, the Prem in Prempro, was prescribed alone. The low-dose chronic horse estrogen caused uterine cancer by fostering an overgrowth of the lining of the uterus. Originally, a doctor aiming to replace hormones only prescribed estrogen replacement therapy, ERT. But once the epidemic increase of uterine cancer was identified, instead of pulling Premarin from the shelves, Upjohn, the original maker of MPA, invented another drug out of natural progesterone. The molecule of natural progesterone found in a compound called genistein in plants was chemically altered into a palatable drug that has been proven to have life-threatening side effects like heart disease, breast cancer, stroke, and dementia. The two drugs were eventually packaged together and remarketed as Prempro to prevent the horse estrogen from causing uterine cancer and increase the market share to women with uteruses. However, unlike real progesterone, which has a rhythmic, cyclical presence in your body 2 weeks out of every month, if you take Prempro, you receive Provera every day. In actuality, this combination of horse estrogen and fake progesterone can't ever recreate a normal cycle. So although it's marketed as HRT, it's not. It's not really hormone replacement for two reasons. One, because it's a drug, and two, because it's prescribed in a static dose, which has no resemblance to what used to go on hormonally in your body when you were young. In the end, the static chronic dose of progestin, like Provera, in a combination dose with an animal source estrogen like Premarin, blocks the horse estrogen's effect every day. So any benefits known to result in heart, brain, and breast from estrogen are lost or diminished. Even though this combination drug can cause breast cancer, heart disease, and dementia, it's still widely available to women all over the world. There's no question, in fact, that Wyeth Erst knows this and still does not withdraw it voluntarily from the marketplace. There is no question because the side effects are published in the package inserts written by the company, and many of the studies reporting toxicity were funded by Wyeth Erst themselves, or they at the very least donated their product for testing. There's no question because they provided free drugs for the recent Women's Health Initiative study that said so. Now, according to the news, hormone replacement not only increases your risk of cancer, but also causes heart disease and stroke. Conventional HRT invented by Wyeth Erst really does cause these side effects. The hormones made in your body really don't. The age of Aquarius. There is an alternative to hormone-like drugs available. The real bioidentical hormones that Wyeth Erst altered in the lab to create the unnatural HRT drugs can be had in their pure form by prescription. More than likely, your doctor has never heard of natural hormones. But getting your hands on the real McCoy isn't the only problem. Getting enough hormones to make yourself a real, normal, physiologically rhythmic cycle, just like when you were young, that's the problem. It wasn't just the chemical composition of the drugs in Prempro that made us sick. It was the dosage, too. Real hormones in your body pulse in waves of seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, and seasons, because we have evolved as an integral part of nature and the cosmos, not in opposition to it. The rhythm of the planet we live on is in us, literally. Hormonal rhythms echo the pulse of life, of hearts beating, of lungs expanding and contracting, even of the gait of our walk. The hormones give us menstrual periods that count the beat of time for women month after month, year after year. Men, too, have rhythm. Young males peak hormonally in the fall and drop low in the spring after their testosterone kicks in. Everything on Earth does. Birds sing and bees dance because of their respective testosterone levels. There's the music again. The only primate besides us that sings is the gibbon. Gibbons are monogamous because resources are scarce, and a pair bond does a better job of defending a territory, ensuring the survival of offspring. As it is in all venues, female selection is the rule. The female chooses a territory, maybe one with a great fruit tree, and then invites a male to join her. She does this by rising at first light and singing a very, very complicated song. A cacophony of males try to return her call. The male who is smart enough to sing her song back note for note wins himself a life, children, a home, and a wife. Take a moment to remember. Before puberty, music was nice, but after your hormones kicked in, music was everything. Life surely still has a beat, but we aren't dancing to it. The big question is, how come no one's talking about the fact that we've lost our rhythm? When our menstrual cycles dwindle and cease, the hormones that kept us in step with each other to mate and survive are gone. The beat goes on. The world as we know it, from bacteria to blue whales, the whole universe, in fact, is all about timing, within each of us and in relation to everything outside us. The individual rhythms overlap into larger patterns that then again weave in and out of each other. Human beings swim in this sea of rhythms. The examples are myriad. The moon provides more light with its full face, and sure enough, as the new moon ends, every 28 days females bleed. Babies in utero synchronize their movements to the sound of their mother's voices. This sets up a pattern of emotional response to mom calling you for dinner as your very brain architecture is being laid down. More babies are born between midnight and 6 a.m. than any other time period, thanks to our circadian clock. The circadian clock in every cell measures one spin of the planet, or 24 hours. Instrumental music is just an expression of those rhythms, ineffable to some, but quite tangible to others. Because there is a beat to it. It is generally accepted that the rhythm originates in the music, but more likely, music is a highly specialized releaser of the rhythms already inherent in the listener. We, and all life on Earth, are dancers to a tune we've heard so long that we've forgotten we're dancing. A scientist named Hans Selye asserted that it's only when we can't dance that we get sick. He called it perennial adaptation. His hypothesis was that illness only occurs when an organism is stuck in a constant effort to adapt to the next level of existence, when it is no longer living in rhythm. When our menstrual cycles stop, it's evident that we won't make it to the next level, reproduction, ever again. Nature hates that. Although we live unaware of it, consciousness itself is a manifestation of hormonal cues, and hormonal cues are the rhythmic regulators inside us. Our desires for food, love, sex, and shelter are hormonal interfaces between our bodies and the world around us. The sun, the stars, and our own planet tick off the passing hours and seasons. The ticking is referred to as time. When life appeared on Earth, the light and dark cycles occasioned by the revolving of our planet as it exposed first one, then the other side to the sun made up of the environmental cues by which human life evolved. The roll of the tides caused by the forces of the moon, and the seasonal rhythms that change as the planet travels in its orbit around our sun, became the basis for yet another subset of clocks. So day, night, hot, cold, wet, dry, and the moon's gravitational effect are the clocks that strike the beat to which all life, including our personal life, keeps time. It is not a coincidence that women menstruate in tandem with the lunar cycle. We adapted to the rhythm of the planet and internalized it in our hormonal rhythms. Our hormones design the rhythms of our sleep, our appetite for sex and food, and our menstrual, birth, and nursing cycles in tandem with the weather and food supply. In order to survive, all things alive had to integrate life-sustaining activities in rhythm with the planet's offerings. Sleeping, eating, mating, playing, learning, giving birth, and even dying are set to internal clocks. When things cease to beat, they cease to be. Do you want to dance? Living in Earth time means that when the warm sun shines, it's time to look for food and to mate, and when it's dark and cold, it's time to sleep and hide. We humans lived according to this rhythm for most of our history on this planet. All of us who shared this planet know these calls for survival in our bones and soul. Fiddler crabs know the 12-hour tidal clock and forage on the beach at low tide. Oysters know to feed at high tide, and human males know it's fall when the freshman girls appear on campus. Our internal clocks, regulated by hormones, keep all living things in step, not only with each other and our individual species, but with the rest of the universe. Staying in phase with all other life and bodies in motion creates biological harmony. Science calls this homeostasis. In a healthy organism, the internal environment remains constant or self-maintaining, even when the external environment fluctuates wildly. Having the ability to translate an environmental cue like light, for example, gives all creatures great and small the capability to predict weather and food supply, because light means food grows, and food means survival. The rhythm of nature is so internalized that every molecular action of every hormone to its receptor, on every gene in every cell, functioning in every organ of your body, hears the cosmic tune. It's called entrainment. The internalization of planetary cues by hormone actions assures survival. Entrainment means that the environment sings the song and your hormones hum along. Cortisol, insulin, melatonin, prolactin, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, and growth hormone all play like the keys of a grand piano in response to environmental sheet music. The spontaneity and ephemeral nature of hormonal response is how we are entrained to the rhythm of life. The system is programmed to last as long as we remain reproductive. We have just enough hormones on board to last at most 50 years in reasonably good health. Then, as we literally run out of hormones, we lose the ability to use the raw materials of life to create new life. And as far as nature is concerned, we're finished. Riders on the storm. Picture life as a slinky lying on its side, circles connected in a spiral. Now picture the one-way arrow of time traveling the circles of loops that seem to go on forever. If we follow the arrow of time as it carries information and energy through the organism, us, in the form of food and light, coming in from the outside, traveling through us and out again on the other end, it becomes obvious that all organisms are dissipative structures, that is, structures that lose energy just living. We use up resources over time and literally wear ourselves out doing it. The second law of classical thermodynamics describes the process of the dissipation of energy as the movement of energy away from the point of equilibrium, which in humans is about the age of 26 years, when human growth hormone and estrogen start to decline. In our individual lives, the circles or loops carrying information begin to narrow as we age and run out of hormones. We literally start to run down like an old record player unwinding in terms of physical function. This dissipation of energy is called entropy. Entropy is essentially an organism moving away from order to disorder. Any closed system, like the human body or a cell, will spontaneously move in the direction of ever-increasing entropy or dysregulation as the arrow of time moves away from equilibrium. With fewer hormones in place to regulate and mandate order, ever-increasing disorder ensues. Aging is our personal experience of cellular entropy. The loops in the spiral of eternity get smaller and smaller as we age. Just as a dying heart slows its beat in old age, your menstrual periods get shorter and shorter and farther apart as you approach menopause, because our ovaries are running out of eggs. That's why we run out of estrogen and are no longer fertile. The eggs were the source. Without an estrogen peak in a woman's blood every month, her brain stops sending the monthly signal to ovulate or release the egg the next month. The absence of a released or popped egg leaves her without the progesterone that would be secreted by the egg shell or degrading egg sac. It is progesterone's major job to regulate the genes that cause all of a woman's cells all over her brain and body to grow, to differentiate, or to die. Progesterone is one of the premier regulatory hormones. Without it rising cyclically, the woman becomes, literally and figuratively, on the cellular level, out of control. This is the beginning of aging and ultimately the onset of the death of the organism that is you. Sex hormones register directly to genes that flip on and off according to hormonal directives, elicited by environmental cues. Sex hormones determine which genes are expressed, turned on, or silenced, turned off in the nucleus of every cell in the body. Estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, testosterone, insulin, prolactin, and melatonin reach all the way down into the nucleus of every cell and every organ in your body to hit promoter regions and response elements on genes that literally control the stuff of life. Hormones not only cause you to think, behave, and react in ways that enhance your chances for survival, but they also cause you to go forth and multiply. Without regular ovulation, which must be stimulated by high enough levels of estrogen, and without the progesterone that follows ovulation, the regulatory genes involved in cancer, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and autoimmunity are left deranged or uncontrolled. Your particular experience of this dysregulation will take whatever form your inherited genetics dictate. In other words, when your sex hormones fall off and you start to die, the disease that gets you will depend on your family's personal threshold of entropy. Will your heart or breast or blood sugar go first? when you're strange. In a natural environment, not the one we live in today with electricity and antibiotics, a woman's fertility would start to fall off in her late 20s after she had given birth to and breastfed 4 or 5 children. If she actually made it to the ripe old age of 35, and she hadn't already died in childbirth, been eaten by a tiger, drowned in a flood, or pricked her finger gathering berries and died of an infection, she would be a grandmother. In our world, a world that has encouraged us to postpone childbearing, fertility still drops off in our late 20s. Today, by 35, a woman who is finally financially and emotionally ready to have a child may have to spend a lot of money on fertility treatments or surrogates because inside, her reproductive machinery is still that of a grandmother. Electricity and antibiotics haven't made delaying childbearing any more physically possible at 35 than it was 30,000 years ago. We're in even more trouble now. In most of us now, our biological age doesn't really match our chronological age anymore. When we lived outside most of the time and slept when it got dark and ate what the season offered us, we were as old in years as the number of trips we'd taken around the sun or how many moons or months we had lived. But now, at 35, many of us are years older inside. Now we live in a world where it seems as if the sun never sets and we never run out of fruit, sugar, although we have evolved to experience one mating season a year, which is one summer. Our lives in the modern world are all sex all the time. When the light is long, that is, in summer, we are programmed to feel sexy because the sunlight and plentiful carbohydrates of summer increase our insulin, which provides us with extra circulating estrogen and testosterone to let us appreciate it hormonally. That's why the beach seems so sexy. It's the light, not just the bikinis. Conversely, when the days are short and dark outside, even though we may be sitting in front of a blinking computer screen under fluorescent lights, rising melatonin lowers our body temperature a few tenths of a degree, which is enough to cause a shiver and yawn. Your body is trying to remind you that it's winter outside and should be winter inside of you, too. In nature, before now, we went dormant. More sleep, no sugar, very little sex, when the temperature dropped in winter, just like the other animals and plants. That's all different now. Now we turn up the heat and get a cup of coffee. By creating endless summer, we have changed the rules of life. Since the light is long all the time in our world, it has put us, our bodies, out of rhythm with the earth, on which we evolved to survive. Everything in this life is all about timing, and we've altered what had to be a rhythm to be a constant. There is no tempo without variation. That's why it is as much of a physical and mental problem when your menstrual periods stop as it is when your heart starts skipping beats. It's a physical impossibility to be part of life and not be able to keep time. This fundamental change in our environmental cues for mating and aging began in the mid-1860s. Then, in the mid-1960s, after about 10 decades of altered light and food and exaggerated rhythms, birth control pills were invented and took us even farther away from the beat of nature and our own bodies. When Proud Mary keeps on burnin'. In the world we live in today, the extended periods of artificial heat, light at night, and year-round carbohydrates out of season create a condition of endless summer that is read loud and clear by the system's response clocking mechanisms embedded in us all. The artificial triggers of man-made light and food not only fool your insulin, cortisol, and melatonin systems, which wreaks havoc with your sleep cycles and makes you jumpy and crave sugar. They affect your sex hormones, too. Sex hormones are inextricably synchronized with your insulin and melatonin for accuracy in timing mating. In summer, the weightless, invisible energy of the sun saturates plants and fruit. They ripen, and we eat them. Any sugar is a carbohydrate, and any carbohydrate is just sugar. When the plants and fruits as solid sunlight enter the body, over time the sun's energy becomes very visible as insulating weight around our middles and back sides. In the natural world, which still has seasons, we would reburn this weight, this solar charcoal, in winter when summer's carbohydrates were gone. But when winter never comes because we have indoor heating and electric lighting.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?